And we are live.
Hey, I'll make sure everything's on here. Hi, my name's Joe Lopez, and I'll be your MC tonight. I was going to say like MC Hammer. Preston, what's up, brother? Um, yeah, my name is Joe Lopez, and I am a descendant of Pueblo and Apache people there in central New Mexico. Um, and I live in Los Angeles, California, on the home territory of the Tongva Gabrielino um, Indian. So, just wanted to welcome you to Good Medicine Way. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your weekend. Yeah, Joe Umbedadaka has dubbed me um, a nickname, so I'll let her spill the beans, I guess. But anyway, um, yeah, thanks for joining us, and I'm excited for our speaker and our time tonight. So I'm just going to give it over to Miss Christina for our welcome and land of acknowledgement.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joe. Welcome to Good Medicine Way. We're so glad to have you. As Uncle Casey says, this is one of the best places to get decolonized theology. And I would say also to hear from some folks in the community and real practitioners. I think in some spaces, we get a real academic, decolonial teaching, and this is a place where you can come, be all of who you are, and to just experience life and teaching together. So I'm so glad to be here. I'm coming from the traditional lands of the Yokuts and Mono community in Central California. Something exciting. Some people aren't excited about it, but I'm very excited about it. I think a lot about the waterways in the community that I live in now, and the ways that, agriculture and farmers have diverted the natural pathways of the river, Pa'ashi. There used to be a lake near where I live, maybe an hour away, and it was the largest lake west of the Mississippi. And this lake was called Piashi, and it was really a sacred lake for the Yokuts community. It was gone for the past maybe almost century, and I've been never thought I'd see it in my lifetime, but the lake has returned because of a season of rain, because of snow melt, because I think Creator just wanted this lake to return. It is a beautiful, sacred space for the communities here, and it means a lot that she's returned. And there's a giant heat wave, but I hope that I can visit soon. But thank you all for being here. I'm excited for the teaching today.
And I just want to introduce Eshe to do our opening prayer.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Joe. Thank you for being the MC tonight. Just gonna share a little prayer here. The same one that I kind of said in the past. And out in the land right now, we literally just pulled up from Creek territory in what is now called Charleston, South Carolina. So just pulled up from there, literally right before you called my name, Joe. But back on the land now, so it feels good to do this from the land. So without further ado, let's say a quick prayer, and then we'll continue on. Let's see if I can find my prayer now. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. All right. Light bearer, we now face the east. We thank you for a new day and a new beginning. We thank you for fire, which gives us warmth, light, and protection. We ask that whatever parts of our being need light, that you would shine your life-giving spirit on us, just as Father Son shines life-giving light on Mother Earth each new day. Bring light and wisdom to our life's journeys, so we may not walk in darkness. I'll face the south, since I know where the directions are out here. Life-giving spirit, we now face the south. We thank you for the gift of healing and adaptability. We thank you for the waters of life which nourish our beings. We ask that you would show us how to be fluid like water, so that when new or difficult situations arise, we may navigate them in a good way. Bring abundance to our lives, so you may channel your abundance to the nations around us, human and non-human. And great healer, we now face the west. And right now, as I'm facing the west, the sun is literally going down. We thank you for the night as well as the day. We thank you for bringing to light what would have otherwise remained in darkness. And also thank you for the challenges of life that increase our dependence on the light. We ask that whatever arises that is negative, that you would give us clarity to know how to end toxic cycles that don't serve the community of creation or you. Bring rest to our spirits and resolutions to the cycles we encounter, just as our relatives rest when the sun sets each day. And rescuing spirit, we now face the north. We thank you for the spirit of the wind, which breathes life into all of us moment by moment. We thank your life-giving breath for resurrecting what was dead. We ask that our minds and hearts would be nourished and kept well. We ask for good thoughts and for protection from the crooked ways of Coyote, and also ask you for a blessing and guidance to those we perceive to be enemies. Bring your protection and purifying presence to revive what needs healing and new life, just as the winds blow the dead leaves from the trees so that new leaves may grow in their place. The spirit which comes to us from Nishkemon, from Grandmother Earth, we thank you for supporting and nourishing us and feeding us throughout our lives. It is said that when we separate from the womb of our human mothers, you take that place as the nourisher and comforter of our being and provider. We ask that whatever creator you would have us to do with our hands and feet to usher in new creation in the present for all of our relatives, that we would hear and respond to your voice. We ask you to help us and to take pity on us as human beings, so we may use these gifts you provide us in a good way in order to bring more life into the world. And spirit which comes to us from Father Sky, we thank you for the blessings of life. We thank you for being near us and speaking with us moment by moment in a multitude of ways and in different fashions. Remind us of your power when we grow weak. Communicate to us with your love and grow our hearts soft, so they be like a hollow bone that is clear. Henahane, let it be so. I pass the mantle back.
Kihei, thank you. That was good. Good to start us off. Feel like I need to tell a joke, but I won't. It's not gonna be good. Anyway, I want to introduce Leah and Brian Grover like I need to. Everyone knows who they are. They're gonna give us some songs, and yeah, so take it away.
All right. So we're going to do a couple Jonathan Miracle songs. And then Petadaka threw it in the chat. But yeah, here where we're at is the ancestral lands of the Tiwa people. And then there's also the Tiwa and the Tewa people are in this area, which have been subdivided into like 19 different pueblos over the centuries. And then also the Dene people, couple bands of Apache are out this way, and some of the Ute folks as well. So, yeah, a lot of indigenous camaraderie in this area of the world, and we're honored to be here and thankful for the way that they have kept the land despite the difficulties that colonizers have provided. And let me get the lyrics up, if I can find my cursor. So you guys can all sing along in your own space there, or dance, or whatever you want to do.
Yahweh,
yes you are. Holy is your way up, and the sun, yes you are. And the sun, yes you are. And the sun, yes you are.
Thank you, Grovers. That was awesome for blessing us with your gifts. Are definitely part of my life. So thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to introduce our Miss Diane for Creation Insights.
Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you might be. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. I hope I do okay on this. It's something that's really been on my heart for a couple of months, ever since spring began. As many of you know, I have 7 cats who call my yard and garage, back deck and everything home. And I hope I don't start crying when I talk about this. This might not even be something that's so very true with a lot of you because we care about the land so much, but come spring, people who like to have green grass and perfect yards and you know the list, they start spraying things on their yards, fertilizers, bug killers, whatever. They pay companies to come in and spray their yard to the whole yard. And I am sure that that is what my long hair cats suffered from this spring. They came home, it caught the one I call Rubio first. No, I'm sorry. It got Salvado first. And I thought maybe he had sprained a leg, hurt a leg or something, because I thought he was limping. And as I kept watching him, I realized he was like tiptoeing. He was like all of his feet. And I think his paws were burned from running through yards that had been sprayed from things because people want green grass. And they want grass only. And it grew to where he was watering. He had all kinds of allergic symptoms, watering in his eyes. And there was even the junk that was coming out of his eyes was like tinged with blood. It just breaks my heart. I didn't even realize these are things that I'm learning because I have these cats here. I wasn't so attuned to nature, to the little critters out there. And it's not just my cats. It's the raccoons, the opossums, the skunks, the coyotes, everything that's out there while we sleep and it's walking through the yards. They are affected by these things we do. And then tonight, actually, it's been going on for a couple of weeks. And then tonight, tomorrow night, maybe 2 more nights, it'll be even worse. Yes, tomorrow is July 4th. Let me start by saying I hate fireworks. I never really cared for them, but now with cats and seeing what they do to the animals that we love so much, I will actually probably leave the gathering early because my neighbor right down the street, I don't know how you all have it in your states, but in Indiana, you can set fireworks off from your front yard and they will be doing it here. They've been doing it for weeks, not so close, but tonight and tomorrow night, maybe 2 more nights, it'll be right down the street, right behind me. It'll be very, very close. And my poor cats, and that means the raccoons, the skunks, and all the other critters will be so scared we can't even explain it. And it's just, I've got to see it firsthand, how fearful it is for them. And I just hate it. And so I guess I'm on my soapbox saying, do we really have to spray our yards? And do we really have to set off fireworks if we really love these little critters around that make this world so beautiful for us? I don't know if there's anything else I can say. Thanks for letting me get that off my chest.
Yeah, thank you, Diane, for that. Thanks for letting us know, and I hope the kitty cats are doing better with their feet anyway. But
I should have said they have, for the most part, there still is some sinus and things like that going on occasionally, but their feet have healed okay. And so since it's summer, some people will spray once a month. So I will keep watching for it, but thank you.
yeah. Okay, well, I guess we'll move on to Miss Leah McCoo. I think we took a break last week from doing our sign language, the Lord's Prayer. So hopefully we didn't forget it all. Our fingers are all limber now, like a piano player. We're ready to go.
All right. And
All
yeah,
right.
we're going to read through it first. So let me put up the screen share, and then we can all read through it together, and then Leah will take us through with the O great Spirit, our Father from above, we honor your name as sacred and holy. Bring your good road to us, where the beauty of your ways in the spirit world above is reflected in the earth below. Provide for us day by day the elk, the buffalo, and the salmon, the corn, the squash, and the wild rice, all the things we need for each day. Release us from the things we have done wrong. In the same way, we release others for things done wrong to us. Guide us away from the things that tempt us to stray from your good road, and set us free from the evil one and his worthless ways. Aho, may it be so. Spelling errors and all. All right, take it away.
Ready? Ready? O great Spirit, our Father from above, we honor your name as sacred, holy. Bring your good road to us, where the beauty of your ways in the spirit world is reflected in the earth below. Provide for us day by day the elk, the buffalo, the salmon, the corn, the squash, and wild rice. All the things we need for each day. Release us from the things we have done wrong. In the same way, we release others who've done wrong to us. Guide us away from the things that tempt us to stray away from your good road, and set us free from the evil one and his worthless ways. Aho, may it be so.
Thank you, Leah. That's too much fun. Thank you, Leah. Yeah, just,
Real quick, it seems like some of us practiced over the yeah.
are you all fluent now? You gonna go get a job at the court or like standing next to the stage?
Interpreter.
Hey, there you go.
Except no matter what they say, she's just gonna do Creator's Prayer. And, you know.
Just like it's always butterflies. I don't understand. No.
I like that.
I was like, we
Brian's
became
idea for me to go get a new job as the interpreter for the court, except, sorry, all I will do is the Lord's Prayer. That's all we're doing. Yes. Yeah. But you'll be the better for it.
I was gonna say we're gonna be part of the Happy Hands Club. Happy Hands Club.
Now we just need to get Christina to do like the heart thing, you know? Yeah, no, thanks so much. Again, too much fun. So I just want to I'm all messed up on my list here. Brian and Leah with the giveaways
And the smoke signals.
and the smoke signals.
Yeah.
Get your blanket out. Start
You're
making
right.
the smoke signal.
All right. Well, the first one to tell you about is the women's book discussion, which is every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. We are going through Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. And it is a book that combines Robin Wall Kimmerer's kind of Western University environmental science degree with her Indigenous Potawatomi views of nature as our relative and living in reciprocity with that. It's really beautifully woven together. And yes, there's the cover of the book there Diane's holding up. So yes, on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, the ladies can come to the Good Medicine Way Facebook wall, and at the top left, you'll click on Browse and Events, and it'll be there. The link will be there. You can join us there. And does anyone want to talk about the men's book? Is that all?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still meeting. We're meeting on Wednesdays at 5 o'clock. And it's getting harder for everybody's got busy life during the summer, but we still got a small core of people that are really interested in the book, Mission and the Cultural Other. It's just a great read. One thing that I find when I read it, especially when we have our talks, it's pretty rough on me. I get triggered pretty bad in it. But I don't know if it's good or bad, because I've been finding a release for a lot of the things that I've been dealing with, and a lot of the frustration, the way the church is going and what the church did to us. A lot of that's coming out, but I'm not sure if it's going to be healthy for me. But I've been dealing with this for some 30 years though. That's all. So Eshe knows on there too. So yeah, join us if you can.
back to the microphone. Okay, so yes, if you have any more announcements. Oh, I see Petadaka there, got a hand raised.
Hey, yes, I'm just rearing to go. Just kidding. I wanted to remind everybody of the Wichoni Family Camp and Powwow that's coming up on the 27th of July through the 30th. Registration closes on June 15th, so be sure to submit your registrations by then. It looks like they're going to be doing a lot of fun things in Turner, Oregon. So it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. I know that there's a little group of us that are trying to get over there. Me personally, I'm not going to be able to, but I know Brother Eshe and I believe it was Tamia that were saying that they were wanting to go. So hopefully they can make their way over there and get to experience this once in a lifetime thing, I suppose. I wish that we could go, but there's always next year. So, but yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. July 27th through the 30th, the Turner in Turner, Oregon, the Wichoni Family Camp and Powwow. So enjoy yourselves with that. But yeah. Thank you.
All right, good deal, good deal. And if anyone has any other announcements, we can put them in the chat and then we'll read those for you later on. And moving to the giveaway section, we have a time now if you want to support the work of Good Medicine Way financially, you can go also to our Good Medicine Way Facebook page, and at the top there's a logo for you to click on to donate through PayPal or with another card. And then as we do this song in a minute, we will have a QR code blanket up on the screen. You can take a picture of that and donate that way if you like. And or just message me if there's other ways that are better for you to donate, or if you're kind of having a growing sense in your heart of another way to donate, maybe your time or talent. So this song that we're going to do is called Sorrow Mother. I wrote it several years back, and the lyrics say, "May the fear of pain not close your heart to kindness, for some, through loving rather, have had their own wounds healed."
Oh, I don't know if I'm frozen or not. Can you hear me? Hey, yeah, that was awesome. And I want to look at that instrument next time I'm there. And is that the one I have to bring horsehair for? Okay. Yeah, supposed to do that too. Yeah, I just want to move on and introduce Mr. Preston Jones. And he's going to read Creator's Word for us. So, get away, Preston.
Thank you, Joe. Today's word will be from Psalms 77, 11 to 12. But then I recalled all you have done, O Lord. I remember your grateful deeds long ago. They are constantly in my thoughts. I cannot stop thinking about your mighty works. Words of the Lord.
Thank you, Preston. And then Brian's going to lead us in some flute music as we contemplate those words and get ready for our speaker and our time together.
Joe,
Yes, ma'am.
can I ask a quick question for Preston?
Mhm.
When did he begin singing the word? I'm just curious.
I heard a pastor do it about 5 years ago. I think that's when I first met her. But she really influenced me to understand that it can be sung and it should be sung. And it makes it easier for everyone to memorize.
Yes, yes, I really enjoyed it. I wanted to tell you, I learned that from a rabbi, and he told me that the creator, when he created the world, sung it, all his word. That's what I was told. So I was really surprised when I heard you sing, and I was so moved by it. And I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was great. I just want to introduce Uncle Casey. He is going to introduce our speaker, And
All
just want-
right. Thank you, Joe. Yes, we're privileged to have this young man on with us. You know, we had a story to tell. It must have been 30 years ago or so that I was doing a program out in Oklahoma, and this young man was in the crowd, and I didn't know it at the time, but had an effect on his life back then, and he might share that. But over the years, we've come to know each other a little more. Actually, we served in the same position there in New York City for a little while, which also transitioned over to Atlanta, Georgia, as the Office of Native American Ministries, the General Board of Global Ministries. And they asked me if I wanted the job. And at the time, I was raising a bunch of kids here. And he stepped up and he took the job, and he's been in that arena ever since. And now he's the director of the, I believe it's the Native American Comprehensive Plan with the United Methodist Church. He's Seminole and Choctaw, and become a friend over the years. And over the next few years, I hope we can be able to work with him somewhat, because he's a load of information that he might be able to help us to get our ministry further down the road. Chebon Kernell and I've been friends now for many years now. And I just want to turn it over to him now to finish his introduction of himself. Chebon?
Thank you, Casey. I'm hoping everyone can hear me okay. I don't know how much more I can say, but I'm just thankful. And I was going to actually share that story, Casey, but I didn't want to give away your age and my age as well. I think I was probably 15 years old, and
this was me back then.
It could have been, but we were actually at a youth camp in Ottawa, Kansas, and for the Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference, when I first heard some of the teachings. And, you know, I don't know if I paid attention like I should have when I was a teenager, but, you know, for yourself, but for others, you know, Reverend Jim McKinney, one of our renowned elders, even, I don't know if you knew Reverend Harry Long, others that were able to expose our people to a greater understanding of who we are as Indigenous peoples. Now, they didn't use that term back then, but they would say, you know, Native American, and even sometimes we still use the term Indian during that day and age. But those definitely set the seeds to where I've come today, and even to some, you know, I ask for forgiveness, because to some it's even somewhat controversial, the belief system that I have, but it comes from the love that I have and I carry in my heart for the well-being of all of our people. But I'm thankful for that moment and that those experiences that I've had, because they've comprised and made me who I am today, and the work that I've done all over the world at this day and time. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just say a little bit. I don't want to speak too long. I know seeing the community here in virtual life, you know, I'm really touched by it, how you have worked diligently to connect with each other from various places across the country. And I think that's really something that is sacred, and even something that is difficult to accomplish in this day and age. And even I struggle with that when I encounter a time of spirituality and worship. So I'm touched by the familiarity and the concern for well-being that I've seen in the discussions today. And even I want to chime in different places, but I also just want to respect the integrity of the community. But I want to start. It was asking me to say some things in my language. I'm actually not Choctaw. You might start a rumor, Casey. I'm Muskogee, Creek, and Seminole. And there was actually historically, that's okay, no such thing as Seminole people, that we're Muskogee people. But because of war, because of expansion, we were pushed into what became, or what was, Florida, and the government labeled us that. But I'm born into our ways. Chiaha is my original tribal town, and I actually serve our people in a position today that is beyond the realm of Christianity. as one of our traditional, I just say it's not appropriate for me to say that the term that I have. I would have a speaker say that on my behalf, but I have a position there serving our community, and we're actually right in the middle of those different ceremonies in those ways. But as is appropriate, I'm going to let you know who I am in our way of life and the things that the way we say it in our language. That's what's appropriate for all of you here, but also for all of our ancestors and those that surround us. At this moment in time, they told me that the difference between us and the spirit world is only as thick as a leaf on a tree, meaning that those things that we consider holy are still within our presence, are still within our realm. And so it's important that whatever community that we come from, that we do everything in our power to use that original language that the Creator had given all of us. Because at the end of the day, I'll say this again in a few moments, that we weren't created, we weren't mistakes, that we were given a way of life, we were given a beauty. And that's something I want us to continue to always build for our generations, those that haven't even been born yet, that they can have something. So just bear with me for this moment, but I'm going to introduce myself to you and let you know who I am and what right I have to come here and share these words with you. Chebon Kernell, Chahotip Gadolwin, Halabi Kanidi Idolwa, and Tazakai always. Halabi Kanidi Idolwa, Chogosako, Oleged Hutkin Legat, Hado Goge, Amaleged Don't, Bozit, Chimaleged Nogosogados, Iskinaga, Dois, Mikosaka Chogo, Mao Atidos. I come before you just saying that little bit. And then they also asked me to share something on behalf of this Earth Mother. And I'm going to do my best to say that as well. But I want to speak in English for this part because I want to respect all of these land acknowledgements that were shared from the various regions. Because the way that I speak will be the way that Muskogee people understand this earth and the values that we carry forward. But it does not take away from the sovereignty of each one of your regions and your territories and the communities that have come to be there. And I'll say a little bit more about that as we spend some time together. But Momen, Hayomari, Omajalegadadit, Anabogadadit, Ahakath, Githe, Jagis, Ano Gitskat, Iaskidat, Athakwitskat, Idmojaga, O Hak Githijat, Istjadolge, Inhadajitskat, Abogadit, O Hak Githit, Jayofan, in Folidan Modern, Ahagasamget, Folipgadis, Iste Stajadolge, Fulagan, Athakwajit, Folid always. And what I shared just in a brief few sentences there is that the values that our ancestors carried forward are the values that we try to live by in this day and time on these territories. And it's something that is very different than what we might imagine this world that is surrounding us to be. And even the essence of our understanding of creation was founded in the comments by our relative over here as she talked about her loved ones, these kittens, these cats, and the harm that has been bestowed upon them, is that that's an indigenous mindset. And so these words here that I shared is that my hope is that we will continue to live by those values of all of our indigenous peoples, because the reality is that no matter where we come from on this Earth Mother, that our societies, our ways of life have been there for millennia upon millennia upon millennia. So there was a wisdom and there was a truth that existed in that way of life. There was something that is also that we had that is void in this world around us. And my hope for all of our communities of faith, like ours here and all across the country, is that we can continue to help put those pieces back together of how do we exist with one another. And so I started with that, and I've used some of that language when I've gone back to my homelands over the past year, as I talked about our core values as Muskogee people of love and humbleness, and also walking and being, I guess they would say, lowly in heart, which is being, a way of existing and interacting with each other. And these are the things that carried us forward to survive so much in this world. And so that's what my hope is today as we continue to build whatever community of faith it is that we come from. As Casey was sharing, is that over the past just over a decade. I've worked in several capacities with our Indigenous peoples here, but also I've had the honor and privilege of serving as one of our representatives from North America, serving with the World Council of Churches Indigenous Peoples group, where we relate to Indigenous peoples from all over every region of this earth. And I get to listen and hear some of the stories and the challenges that they carry forward to us, to our meetings and our groups. And some of it breaks my heart because I see history repeating itself. I see extractive society, I see extractive industries continuing to force people into dispossession of homelands and even violence. I've seen, one of the things that we have not come to terms with here in the United States is how there was a massive connection between the US government and the Christian faith to justify our treatment and what happened here in the United States with our people. And in fact, I've seen history repeating itself in other regions right now. And so my hope, by speaking honestly, as painful as it can be sometimes, my hope is that some of that harm can be alleviated and avoided in other parts of the world. And to be honest, if we were to use the Christian context and Christian terminology, that's exactly what would be a calling. That's exactly what I hope that I could bring to that stage. And in some cases we have, but in other cases it hurts, because sometimes there's just only so much that we can do. So today, I don't know too much on what I can say, but to this moment in time, I still go around when I'm invited to our church communities. I still go around sharing, preaching. They ask me to do weddings and baptize all the time, and I do the best that I can. But I haven't served in a local church in a little bit because they've had me going and doing these things. But I do have that local church experience serving the Pawnee Indian community in Pawnee, Oklahoma for several years. And then for a decade, I served here in Norman, Oklahoma at the First American Methodist Church, before I was kind of plucked out by almost like a power vacuum. And in case he knows what I'm talking about, is that there's such a hunger for, we just don't have enough people. We don't have enough leaders with the education, persons. And I didn't ask to be in any of those things. All I asked was I wanted to serve faithfully with what I knew how to do. And they put me in these other positions there. And so that's where I'm at today. During that time, I noticed and I witnessed a few things. I guess I should go back all the way to, when Casey and I first met, is that people would go and they would always say, oh, Chebon, you're going to be a good preacher one day. And I sat there, and as a teenager, that's kind of a weird thing to say to a teenager. We're sitting there trying to be cool. We're like going through puberty. We're going through all these things. We're playing high school sports. I was a wrestler and a football player. I'm like, I don't know if anybody wants to hang out with a preacher. I fought it off. I kept saying, no. I said, I want to be faithful. I said that. I said, I want to be honest. I want to believe in the faith that I grew up in. I had no problem saying that. But if that's something that is lacking in the church, then maybe. But I was thinking, and the bottom line was this, and I've been happily married for going on 23 years now. But I can remember as a teenager, I said, who would ever want to marry a preacher? I sat there and I was like, man, that's not something I want to do. But needless to say, as time went on, I got my education and did those things. I said, enough is enough. I graduated from my undergrad degree, and I was actually heading to law school. And then there was a hunger there. There was something more that I said, this isn't going to satisfy you, because legal precedent is based on European precedent and the legal structure, all the way back to the doctrine of discovery, on and on and on. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. I said, you're not going to be satisfied with that. I said, something deeper is going on. And it was at that moment, I was talking to some young people here in Oklahoma about taking whatever calling they had seriously. And a calling isn't just going into the ministry. Someone can be called to feed the hungry. Somebody can be called to make sure we have clean water to drink. You know, even I heard a relative talking about giving teachings about a tree. A calling can be teaching our relatives of other faiths, of other non-Indigenous persons about how we respect this Earth's mother. A calling can be all of those things. But I realized, I was like, dang, I might have to be a preacher. And so I went to, I actually enrolled in seminary and went to Phillips Theological Seminary. During that journey, I didn't know what to expect. I just wanted to be the best preacher I could be. I didn't ask to be assigned a church. I didn't ask for anything. I said, I'm going to go and get training. I'm going to go and get educated. I'm going to go and try to do whatever it is that is going to be asked of me. I'm going to try to serve God as honestly, as best as I can. And I can remember, I heard things that just made me shake my head. Like, what? You know, I heard other preachers saying, brother, we're going to pray for you that you keep your faith during this time. I'm like, what? What's going to happen to my faith? I said, you gotta be kidding me. But I knew I found out what they were talking about as I went through my studies. You know, I started learning things about, you know, the history of Christianity. I started learning things about how the Bible came to be, you know, introduction to New Testament and those kinds of things. The story I tell is I remember sitting there in my New Testament class with Dr. Dennis Smith, who's passed on now. And one of my fellow students was sitting there and they were talking, they're like talking about Luke, Acts, and how they kind of go together. And the student said, so you're telling me, raised their hand and said, so you're telling me Luke isn't the author of the Gospel of Luke? And people kind of started snickering, like in the class. And I sat there and I didn't snicker. I was sitting there, my head was down because I thought the exact same thing. You know, maybe I was ashamed that I didn't know something that seemed to be common knowledge, I guess. I don't know where they came from. And I just sat there not knowing what to think because I had been told my entire life, you know, the belief system that I came from, that I had at that time was inerrancy, that there was no mistakes in the Bible. There was no mistakes there. And needless to say, I sat there and I was just like, what? What do you mean? Needless to say, it was a long semester, you know, of challenging some of the things I had never heard before, hearing those things. You know, I was just sitting there and I just want to be a preacher. Like, what does this have to do with these things? But all heck didn't really break loose until I started studying the history of Christianity, until I learned how Spain and Portugal was in this massive pursuit to colonize the world. Those two entities, that's where we see the introduction of the papal bulls that we call the doctrine of discovery, the concepts that those persons that were given the authority to explore could seize and take anything they found that were non-Christian. And it even uses terminology such as taken from the heathen and the Saracen, things like that. And I started studying more. Wait a second. When I realized that once the church encountered our ancestors as indigenous peoples, that there was actually an ecclesial debate that went on if these persons were worthy of salvation or not. There was actually a debate on whether these persons were actually humans, and if indeed they even had a soul or not. This is in church record. And I sat there and boy, I was livid because I said, what right do you have to debate our ancestors? In fact, I've preached this in the Methodist structure, Dr. Church at different places. And I said, you debated on whether our ancestors had a soul or not. I'm debating today if the church has a soul or not. And they actually gave me a standing ovation when I said that, because we've got enough stuff going on that I don't want to go down that rabbit hole either. But when I heard that, I was like, I'm going to do everything in my power to affirm who I am. And the word in our language is Istijadolgi, is I'm a native person. And it actually is translated as red man or red people, but I'm a native person. I'm indigenous. I'm going to do everything in my power to affirm who I am. And so from that moment on, I began this journey. Luckily, I was raised around our ceremonial ways. My grandfather was one of our what we call Mikogi, or was assistant chief of our ceremonial town. I had always been there, but no pun intended, I had never practiced it religiously. We go and eat, we'll go dance, we'll go sing, we'll do these things, but we didn't do everything. There was always something that we kept hanging over our head that said, well, if you do that, you got to be in church the next morning. That's how we was raised. But I realized, I started putting the pieces together. I started thinking about how Christianity came to be. I started even studying very intently, like most of my scholarship is in New Testament. I started looking at how the Bible came to be. And I said, wait a second, someone didn't tell us the whole truth. When they came here, when these missionaries came, when they colonized us, someone didn't say what I'm hearing. And I actually debated on whether to leave the church at all, altogether. And I remember one day, someone actually told me about persons that actually looked at the historical Jesus. And for those that study in academia, there's different Christologies. You can understand Jesus with the high Christology, or you can understand Jesus with a low Christology. A low Christology would be one who's attracted more to the everyday actions of Jesus. A high Christology is a believer who might be more attracted to the godly acts, the laying on of hands, the healing of the blind, the walking on water, whereas the other one might be, talking to the woman at the well, or being in the temple and embracing the person who had a sickness, the woman who had a sickness that came in. I started thinking about that. And I said, well, do you have any problems with giving water to the thirsty, giving food to the hungry? And I said, no. And I realized that all across the world, there are many forms of Christianity. There are many forms of this faith that sometimes we don't always see that growing up in the United States. With the versions of Christianity that we see here, we don't always see how great a diversity there is. And so I began to look at that. I began to ask myself, but at the same time, simultaneously, I said, you know what? I'm not going to let any limitations hold me back. I'm going to affirm the prayers of our people, no matter where it may be, no matter where I may encounter them. Perhaps it'll be in Sundance ceremony. Perhaps it will be in peyote religion. Perhaps it will be in the ceremonies of the white buffalo calf woman, of the Lakota people, wherever it might be. I said, I'm going to affirm that. And I started that journey. But it also began with me. And so I began to do what we call the ceremonial ground, is where we come from. We come from mound builders, and we have a stomp dance society where we use our medicinal practices, where we use these types of things. And I said, I can't spend any more time playing around, because we've lost so much of our identity and culture. And I started that journey. And so 20 something years later, here I am, that's what we do. In fact, I'm still recovering. That's where we were all weekend, is that, we deny ourselves sleep, we go through fasting. And the beauty that I seen in those ways, the prayers that I heard in those ceremonies, it demonstrated to me an unmatched love that I often didn't find sometimes in the church. And even I skipped over, maybe one day they want me to write this stuff down, and I won't do it because I'd rather talk, because we're an oral culture. But one day, they want me to share some of these things that I can even remember as my wife to be and I were first starting out, that we found ourselves with child. And I was actually, even though I never left the church, I was ridiculed, I was talked about, and going to church wasn't fun for me anymore. And I can remember going to the ceremonial ground and our Muskogee ceremonies. And one night, my wife to be, I guess she was my girlfriend at the time, she said, I'm going to introduce you to my grandpa, who was also a chief at this particular ceremonial ground. And I was nervous because I hadn't met like a lot of her family or anything. And everyone had been talking bad about us. You need to do this, you need to do that. You're living in sin, all of these things. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to be a man. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to have a job to pay bills and to provide for my family. I'm trying to establish a home. I said, how many of our relatives do we have out there? They don't have a stable place like that. I said, I'm trying to do these things. I said, I'm still figuring it out. Give me a minute. But they still talk bad about me. So I didn't know what my wife's grandmother or grandpa was going to say to me. And she said, come on, let's go introduce you. And I was like, oh, dang. Sit there kind of nervous. And we went up there and introduced me. And all he said was, I'm glad that you're here. And I was like, what? I didn't ruin your granddaughter's life. I didn't, I'm not out here. He said, I'm glad that you're here. And in that moment, I realized that there was something there that I was missing. And that was love. That was something that was genuine, that comes from the heart. It was not like, oh, you got to go get yourself right before you come in. How many times have we seen that in the church today where you got to go get this before we accept you? You got to have a certain financial status before you're accepted. You've got to have a certain clothing style that you wear before you're accepted. Or even Dr. Church, you got to meet these expectations of being a community before you can get resources that everyone else has the privilege of having. You've got to meet these. Well, that's not what the gospel says, But I felt that in a ceremonial way. And so from that point on, I said, I want to do what I can to speak honestly to our church about where they've gone wrong and to accept our ways of life. Now, there's more to it that I wish I could say, and I wish I had time. But as time went on, I did my studies and completed that. Academia was always there. I was asked to be a part of a project. Now, this is a little controversial too, but I did it. One of my mentors, I consider him Dr. Hal Tossig, who's a part of the progressive Christian movement. He said, I'm putting together this document that I want you to be a part of because we need people of color. We need Indigenous peoples to help us. And he said, you might face charges from the church. And I was like, what? They said, they might come after you and do these things. And I sat there and I said, well, it'll be okay. I said, what more have they taken from us? Can you take any more from us? And I said, I'll be a part of it. He said, we're going to go and put together this book that he calls, now, like I said, forgive me, I don't want to offend no one or anything. But he said, we're going to put together what I call a New Testament. He said, all we're going to do is examine early Christian writings that were in circulation before the Bible even came to be together. And he said, I want you to look at them, read them, and see if you find any spiritual value for people today in this century and time. And I was like, oh, you want me? Like, I come from Eastern Oklahoma, this little country guy. I said, you want me to help you with this big project, like all these scholars, like Dom Crossan and Karen King and different ones from Harvard Divinity School. And I'm like, you want me? And so I said, okay, I'll do my best. And so we went through like 47 documents. We're sitting there reading. I can remember even going to the meeting. I was in an airplane. I was behind. I was still reading them. And there was one that I read, and this will be my last little story, that it kind of hit me over the head. It slapped me in the face. And in fact, it haunts me to this day in a good way, meaning that haunting, that it keeps coming up. It's something that you can't get away from. It's some words that I thought was so powerful. I can't get it out of my head. We were sitting there and I was going over these documents. We had to give a rating system, what we thought would be most spiritually valuable, that kind of thing. And there was one document that came from a gospel that's called the Gospel of Truth. And I was just sitting there reading it. But when I came across it, it kind of shook me. And I'm going to read that to you right now. It came from the Gospel of Truth, chapter 17. Now, all of these early Christian writings, including the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they have similar stories, talking about instances, trying to figure out theological questions like who can baptize, how do you understand the Sabbath? This was all very common in the ancient world. It was all going on. So this is a story that's similar. And I'm going to read the first part of it and then the verse that hit me. It says that starting at verse 5. And what was going on was a debate on whether that you could work, if you could work on the Sabbath or not. You might think of that in scripture. Even on the Sabbath, he worked for the sheep he found fallen in the pit. He saved the life of the sheep. He brought it up from the pit. Understand this in your hearts, children of the heart's knowledge. For what is the Sabbath? A day on which it is inappropriate for salvation to be idle. And here's where it hit me. Verse 10. Speak of the day from above, which has no night, and of the perfect light that does not set. And say then from the heart that you are the perfect day, and within you dwells the light that never ends. When I heard that, I said, what? We are the perfect day? We are the perfect creation? I said, what if missionaries after missionaries after missionaries said that instead of a Romans 10:9 that was a theology of obedience? What if they came here to our ancestors and our people said, you are the perfect of all of creation? We would be speaking other languages right now. We would be worshiping in different ways right now. We would be outside living in harmony like our ancestors did right now, if they didn't change that message somehow, some way. And from that day on, I've tried to help us to push away that colonized understanding of existence, for us to have the freedom of being sovereign, being able to say, here's how I want my spiritual life to be. Here's what I want for my family. And we won't suffer intimidation in that pursuit. I've done whatever I can to help us have that freedom in all of its diversity. About 11 years ago, my dad passed away, and we were working on this project back then. And I remember we were 2 weeks in ICU as his heart just got weaker and weaker. And I'd go up there every night until they kicked me out, until about midnight. And I come home and I call him the first thing in the morning. And one day we knew his time was coming, in that 2-week time period. And the way that you say my name in our language is Chebon. He said, Chebon. He said, am I going to go to heaven? And that question broke me because my dad was faithful. He's a member of our church here in Oklahoma City. And I said, Dad, I said, you have nothing to worry about. You raised me. You taught me how to pray. You taught me how to ask for forgiveness. You taught me how to love others. I said, you have nothing to worry about. But for some reason, what I claim as spiritual violence, he had encountered that somewhere that said that, you might go face eternal damnation. You might go and do this. He had that in the back of his mind. And I said, let me read the scripture to you. And I read this gospel of truth to him. And I said, Dad, you are the perfect day. You have no darkness in your life. You are the best of God's creation. And today, that's what I share with our people. You are the best of Creator's world. The children, I'm blessed to see these little ones here, to hear them. Everything that you're working for, you're the best of creation. And we all know there's enough work to go around with understanding our earth, land back, missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, all of these things. That my prayer is that you will continue to work so that our people can see another day, and so that our children will have a way of life that they can call their own. So with that, I'll stop. Like I said, there's much more that I could say, but I think I took more time than I should have. Mado jage just shared to each one of you.
Chebon, thank you.
That's
Thank you.
Had to step outside just for a minute. We're getting ready. Like I said, we're having the dinner here. So the grill is going to be lit pretty soon. Chebon, I am so impressed with the calling you've had on your life. And I follow you some, and your words have influenced me as well in my ministry here with the Good Medicine Way and other places I go. Just to let you know, Chebon has several talks that you can also hear on YouTube as well. He's very articulate. He's very well versed in a lot of different topics, sovereignty, mascot issues, awakening the church to a new way of doing church. A lot of ideas that he has are very similar to what I've been promoting as well. And I just appreciate you, Chebon. I'm glad to be your friend. Know you from years past, and we know many of the same people, and it worked with a lot of different. I look forward to many good years in the future here too. And don't worry about my age. Everybody here knows that I'm I'm 66 going on more. So appreciate you. I want to turn it over to Brian Grover, who leads us in a time of question and response now. And this has been one of the greatest parts of this ministry is everyone that asks a question is also growing deeper in their spiritual development as well by asking questions of the preacher that, as you know, preachers don't allow questions in their sermons. Yeah, you just take it for granted that they're right, and whatever you're thinking about, you don't get a chance to ask. But we open it up, and we want to do that now with you. And I want to turn it over to Brian, who is going to lead us first into a quiet time so that we don't jump into our questions to you, but we reflect on them a little bit with a flute song. And then after that, he'll take it over. So give Brian a little time here.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Chebon. So it's really a great dovetail from what we were talking about last week. Because last week we were talking about the colonial influences in Christianity and how through the Roman Empire and then the various European countries and colonization, like how much the message that the first century church really understood, how much that had changed over the centuries, and like how much error is really in modern American theology because of these kinds of misreadings of the scripture. So yeah, what you're talking about today is like really, it's just kind of like we're just going like the next step from that. One thing just to get us started that I was curious about is that you've done a lot of work within the kind of status quo Methodist Church, and these kind of colonized ways of thinking about the scripture like are so ingrained in our status quo churches, that they don't even recognize them as being like from colonial culture. They just think, oh no, that's what the Bible says. And just, man, the cognitive dissonance is like so deep. I happened to be at this little bit more of a conservative church the other day, and this guy was sharing, and he started talking about like the dangers of mixing religion and politics. And he was like talking about that, and he's like kind of setting the stage for it. And I was sitting there thinking like, wow, is this guy going to challenge his congregation about Christian nationalism and where things are going? And I was like getting like, wow, this, I did not expect this at all from this church. And then all of a sudden he like flips it over and goes on this kind of Islamic phobic kind of thing about how like Islam is really like their heroes are actually the Antichrist, and that's what we have to expect for in these coming end days and blah blah blah. And I was just like, man, how could you not see that what you were talking about is exactly what your church is going through right now? So I don't know. I mean, for me, it just gets like, I'm so often personally just feeling like enough with, you know, like status quo church. Like, you guys are just not going to get it. But at the same time, I also understand that God is all about redeeming and restoration and rescuing us from the places where we go that are causing us to walk not in harmony with Him, but in this dissonance. But so I don't know if you just want to talk a little bit about like some of your experiences kind of in that realm, because I know you've been like walking that struggle for a while now.
No, I think for sure during the past 3 years of the pandemic, but even maybe a year before when I came over to what we call the Native American Comprehensive Plan, about 90% of what I'm doing is even beyond Methodism. It's within, you know, the greater community and really just the country as a whole, are understanding and attacking that dissonance, because Christian nationalism permeates so many sections of the entire country. From our understanding of the words that I use are the commodification of society, extractive society, just on and on and on. We think that's reality. Even you heard some of that come out of my narrative when I was sharing some words just now about getting a good job, you know, being of gainful employment. All of those things, they come from one mindset. And scripture obviously is different, very different than that, especially the gospel in its, you know, in its most pure state, which would be the closest to the historical life of Jesus, is very different than that. And even when we think about all of our indigenous cultures, we would have had something very different in understanding that thankfully we still have pieces of that cosmology of our indigenous people still today, even though it is fractured, even though we're fighting to keep our languages, we're fighting to keep our religions in place. So I've done what I could. You know, I think one of the most biggest examples of a few years ago, I think it was 2016, I was working with our entire denomination, the Methodist Church, with what they called the Acts of Repentance. But don't get me started too much on what that meant. It was a loaded thing, but I wanted to do it because, in my opinion, you know, people ask me, why don't you leave the church? And I say, well, I do feel called to be here because I still believe Christianity is one of the, if not the most single entity that harms indigenous peoples across the world. And I said, I want to stay here because I want you to have a better understanding. Like the scripture I just read, that's Christian history. That's not indigenous history. Now, it parallels a lot with our histories, but it's their history. I want you to know that this is where your roots are, Christian church. So one of the things we did is that we hosted the Council of Bishops here in Oklahoma, and we had the entire, almost the entire program. So one night was dedicated. And I said, what better way? I said, you don't need to hear from me. You don't need to hear from anybody else. I put 4 indigenous women up there to let them talk about language, to let them talk about food sovereignty, to let them talk about their spirituality, to all of these primarily white European bishops. And we held them, I guess you could say we held them captive, you know, for 3 hours that night, and just said, here, you know, tell them what they need to hear on how we live, on the values that we try to persevere with, that we try to maintain. So it's been little pockets of resistance like that I would like to think had an influence, and they did. I mean, there's things that were built by those seeds that grew from those seeds that were planted. But unfortunately, those mechanisms of the church are massive. The mechanisms of society and how it links together these tentacles of Western thought, whatever you want to call it, they're connected to each other. So I've tried to do everything in my power to wherever I go to deconstruct that. And so one of those is, by being oral, by being verbal, trying to maintain our way of life so that you can see me and how I understand this world and my walk in it. But not everybody always understands that, especially, even we're thinking about the diversity of our recovery with Indigenous identity, is that all of us are at different places. All of us are in that process of putting the pieces back together. And I think sometimes we struggle with that. We butt heads, we point fingers. We see it, and even I'm guilty of that myself sometimes. But just understanding that we're trying to do what we can to walk as our ancestors did, and then with the challenge of Christianity, what do we do? But just having that freedom to construct something that it fits our families and the society around us, I think is the freedom that I try to help. So a lot of that has been more not even ecumenical, but more interfaith, of just trying to be working with our communities to help affirm just so much of our spirituality that can inform a healthy way of understanding our families, our children. And right now, this whole year has consisted of protecting our forests and our world around us. Is that some of those videos that you might see come up are specifically about me being in the forest. Is actually where I was a week ago, where we're trying to defend some of we call it Weelaunee Forest in Atlanta. And I'll stop with this. We don't realize that today, in this day, the entire planet, 97% of the natural world has been disrupted by human interaction, so that only 3% of this Earth Mother is in its natural state all across the world. And that's something we have to begin to take seriously every time we see a construction site, every time we see a tree being pushed down, all of these things. And so I was touched by the story that was shared before, because we too have a grandmother tree. We call her Bosie, which is grandmother in the Muskogee language. That's around a red oak that's around 400 years old. That the clear cut right now is almost about, I would say, maybe about 400 yards away from where she's at. And so we're very nervous about that. And I actually did the photos with her last Monday. I had to sneak through police lines to get there, but I just wanted people to know she's still here, but we have to take care of it. So sorry about that. I just went off on a tangent a little bit.
Am I here?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, Chebon, can you put that verse 10 of that New Testament in the chat, because I want to get it. I want to save it. It reminds me of this one song Lee McHugh has. I might have to ask her to sing that at some point. But there is a comment from Facebook from Josh Hopping, and he says, as someone who found life within the writings of the early church mothers and fathers, I have found your comments about those documents wonderful. Wado, thanks. So yeah, I mean, really, they were just the Christian bookstore of their day. That was the Christian books outside of the Bible that was going around. Yeah, I think that verse 10 that you quoted really doesn't contradict anything in the Bible. And yeah, that would have been so great. What is this that Casey's showing us?
I don't know, you're muted, Casey, if you're trying to talk.
All right, we were just trying to show you that Amazon has the New Testament.
Okay.
Let's see if we can put that
Cool.
in.
And Dave already posted because he's Dave. All right. So any other? Okay, there's a hand. Is that Ishay? Ishay in the dark. Go ahead, Ishay.
All right. Good evening. Chebon, I think it was really interesting what you were sharing about the Seminole. I've recently read a book about the Yamasee people, and I actually did a archaeology project here in a little town called Pocataligo, And so I was gonna ask you if you ever heard of the MSC and if you had any knowledge of them, but we literally just finished this dig probably about a month ago. It's one of the first archaeological digs that's been done of the MSC. There's couple other ones, but found some pretty interesting things I'd be happy to share with you, because I know the MSC branched off of the Muskogee Creeks. And so yeah, I was just interested to know if you knew anything about that. And then I also wanted to see, I heard about that forest near Atlanta and Cop City and everything and what they're planning on doing. And I was at Standing Rock, so that's like really dear to my heart, like standing up for the land and the water and for the future generations. And so I was just wondering what we can do to support you. I don't live too far from Atlanta. I live about 5 hours. So just wanted to see what we could do to help, if there is anything besides prayer, of course.
No, I do believe in prayers, and ceremony is just as strong as any blockade that we can do. For sure, I do know of Yamasee people and have encountered them here in descendants here and there, and even recognizing that even Muskogee is kind of almost a colonizing tribe, that there was a day and time when we would have multiple smaller tribes all throughout Georgia, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, all of these areas here. And just because of expansion of this country, that we saw the kind of, I don't like saying extinction because they were just absorbed into other communities. It kind of evolved over time. So I do know that connection, but I don't know enough. I think just like everyone else, I try to piece everything together. Every time I go to our homelands, I learn a little bit more. Some people might say you know a lot, but I'll say no. Compared to what we were, I only know a small fraction of what we were. And that's one of the reasons why I'm involved with the Stop Cop City. And there's a Facebook or Instagram page that has a lot of information on that, of how we can do that, because what's happened is that they're clear cutting 400 acres of the country's largest urban forest outside the city of Atlanta, just south of the city. And so I was asked to go there 2 years ago to talk about our understanding of the earth and dance and sing. And I did. And that's when I found out about what they were clear cutting for. So not only do I believe in the earth, that it has to be here, because there's a reason why this life gives us oxygen. We can't hurt her. And there's a reason why we breathe that oxygen. But it also, when they told me that they're building a militarized police training facility, I've been all over the world and I've seen police forces, I've seen armies. Never is it safe when you increase the amount of weapons on the street. Tanks, they're trying to build an urban, like a city, mock city, where they try urban warfare. They practice that. And never is it going to be safer with more weapons like that. We're never going to establish a more peaceful society. And even as a person of color, that we're going to be the recipients of that violence. And we've already seen that. I have an Indigenous relative who's still in prison because he was watching a concert back in March, and he was arrested and given domestic terrorism charges for being at that concert. He's actually under the captivity of ICE right now. So I think just amplifying that, I do have an Instagram where most of that Cop City Wilani Forest work goes to, and we call it, in the language we say Estijati. It's called Estijati_Lorax, because my daughter called me the Lorax one time, and I say, that's kind of cool. I said, let's make an Indigenous Lorax, kind of thing. And so it's out there, and that's where I put most of my Cop City stuff on, because I know that's not everybody's cup of tea. Because it's just a part of me. That's one piece of me. I'm a whole human being, that I'm concerned about it, but I'm also, a husband, a father, a grandfather, all of these things. I try to be good, live with integrity. So I don't want people to think I'm just like, hey, we need to go set this blockade. But at the same time, I want people to know when injustice is there. And so that's why I was involved with that. So yeah, so you can just follow that, or just check it out, or any of those Stop Cop City, Defend the Forest sites. I think we'll have a whole bunch of information. We are trying to develop our 501c3, that's Muskogee Southeastern Indigenous rematriation, that we do migrations back to our homelands, because I said, we want to know the beauty and how deep our culture goes before it's gone, before you put a building on it, you know, before you destroy everything that our ancestors thrived in. So that's what our hope is, but I haven't got it quite in place yet. I have a couple calls I need to make where we can receive funds for that. If you're called, I'm not ever going to say we have to, but you know, that's the work we're trying to do.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Chebon, I just first of all, I want to thank you for clarifying about the Seminole Nation, because I spent 20 years of my life in Hollywood, Florida, seeing the word Seminole everywhere, but you were the first person that actually explained your nation to me. So I thank you for that. And I also thank you because coming from I'm non-Indigenous, but my husband was. And coming from a church where it's very colonized, and I got the chance to see from your perspective through your eyes what people were seeing and why people were leaving. I am so glad and so proud of what you guys are doing. And all I can say is please be encouraged and know that there are non-Indigenous people like me. We're here behind you. Whatever we can do, just let us know, because we have a big group. There's a big group. I know a big group ready to leave a church because they want to work with you, because they know that the ways of the white man have not been right. Even the word of God was not written right. And you said it yourself when you had to think about it, that Luke and everybody else is laughing, but you weren't. Well, I've had to do that too. So I think in the great creator's plan, he's putting us all on the same page. Those who have a heart for him, we're all going to be on the same page eventually. And he's getting us there one day at a time. So I'm sorry I took so much time, but it was a blessing to be here tonight.
No problem, Lisa. And I will certainly do my best. I think for all of us, like, we're all theologically just a little bit different, but we're all working. You know, we're all trying to deconstruct. We're all trying to build back up. And I know Casey and I think what we're up against is there's just not a lot of us around for a host of reasons. And so, like, we all know each other. we try to do what we can. But I appreciate that, because, like, for me, I'm trying to protect the integrity of our indigenous cosmology as much as we can. But I'm finding out that I have to use modern methods, talking about Instagram, talking about social media, even I see how sophisticated even the multiple streaming services that you have for this service has. Like, we have to do things a little bit to be effective with our message. So I think we're trying. I go back and forth, depends on what day of the month or what month it is, when I can engage that kind of thing. Like right now, we're really, because we're doing our ceremonial things for the next month or so, I'm really just here. So I appreciate that. So you'll have to forgive me, relatives. I'm going to answer this last question on the chat, but then I might have to just depart. My family's waiting for their dinner as well. I want to drive to Albuquerque and get some of that barbecue from Casey, but it might take me 7 hours to get there. But there's a question here that talked about how did we get into this calling? And that's from, let me see if I can say Betty Daka.
It's Betty Daka.
Betty Daka. I can hear it.
Yeah, no,
Go
ahead. Okay.
No, I just say I can hear it better than I can read it.
Yeah. So I was just saying, I'm sure that you mentioned it in the beginning of your talk, but I was wondering, like, what was the first step you took to get into your calling? Like, I'm sure there are many of us here who are interested in kind of like walking along the path, beside you. So I was just kind of wondering, like, is there any advice that you can give some of us young people who are interested in trying to, you know, keep the momentum going? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think where I would start is that now, number one, I came to the calling was very conservative understandings of God. And so it was almost like I was guilted into that calling. So I don't think that's something that's healthy for our people. I know it's a tremendous burden to have a calling that walks in Indigenous sovereignty and balances if it's in Christianity. I used to always say that if I'm ever kicked out of the church, I'm going to be okay. I used to say that for about 16 years ago, but they keep pulling me in, Casey, like deeper and deeper. I'm like, I'm trying to get kicked out, but I can't. No, I think when I started though, what I do think would be helpful for our young people today is I was hungry. I was hungry for knowledge. I wanted to know more. While there were moments of despair, like, oh, I didn't understand the Luke Acts kind of thing, I found out why. I found out more. I began to ask questions. I began to read, and I said, you know what? I want to be the best that I can be. And that's why I got my MDiv, which at that time it was an 87-hour program. I was like, good Lord, it took me like 5 years to get through that. But I think that knowledge of not being afraid of reading something that may be different than what you're used to, I think that's where I would say is that it grows the spirituality, it grows, deeper and deeper so that we can give our children the vernacular, the language, so that when someone comes up to them with something spiritually violent, we can help them through that. There's more stories I wish I could share, but I think just having that hunger, because even like what I said today about using the gospel of truth, and I said early Christian writings, that there are some that would label those Gnostic writings, and that term Gnostic is actually a trigger word, meaning that people have demonized these writings even though they were in circulation in the early church. In fact, it took 300 years before we even had the Bible. And even Christian nationalists, they only want to use the King James version of the Bible, which that's 17th century Bible. I mean, so you're 1700 years away from the historical life of Jesus. So for me personally, I got hungry about, tell me what was really going on in that ancient world. And that's what I try to talk about a little bit when it comes up. If I just talk about spirituality and indigenous cultures, I'm okay with that too. I'll sit here, I'll tell me about this white buffalo calf. Tell me about this understanding. I'm okay with that. And so I would just say having that hunger, any kind of those documents, I should have a bibliography, but having an understanding about why is it that we're here? Are we simply trying to avoid hell? If you're simply here for that, you're here for selfish reasons in the Christian church. And everything about Christianity isn't selfish. In fact, it's opposite of that. It's about giving oneself. And so we see everybody in the country rushing to avoid hell without developing this own spirituality behind, oh, why do I want to be here? Ask me why. Who do we think this person of Jesus is? How do we understand God? We have that freedom today, a little bit. I think we're still kind of fighting for it, but that's what I would share right now. Just having that hunger, and not to let someone discourage you, and not even letting the church bully you into asking the questions that need to be asked. So that's what my hope is. But I appreciate it, Casey, and everyone. Leah, everyone, wherever you are, I know our paths will cross again, but I hear doors going in and out, opening and closing, so I might have to depart. But I appreciate that. And maybe one day we'll all come together again, and we'll be able to take some more time out to think about some things. There's probably about 20 dissertations in that little speech I just gave, so we'll do our best.
Well, thank you, Chebon. Thank you. This is how we'll applaud you. So I hope that you will come back on with us again. Maybe take us a little deeper and more connect with us more. Well, let's give it till spring, and update us again. But I really appreciate you. I follow you, and I know we'll connect. We'll connect here in the future. I don't know if you're going to go to camp there in New York. Might be able to try to get there as well. But thank you for being with us, and I know you got to go. Same here. I have to go as well, and we'll. I think the biggest encouragement that you and I both is that we had a calling to know more, because we were so ingrained in the church world that raised us that we took it for granted that that's the way things were, and it isn't. One thing that I promote now is that the churches that we have now, even all the Indian churches across Oklahoma and Michigan and other areas, they were designed by the government in conjunction with the churches to continue to assimilate us. And they kind of trapped us and continue to keep us in that assimilation box, the church box. And we have to know that we have so much more that we could give if we allow ourselves to get out of that box that they put us in. We do not have to continue the assimilation that they're still promoting in our lives. So I'll let you go. Thank you very much, and we'll stay in touch. I'll call you sometime in the future here and touch base. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Love you, man.
Love you too. Thank you.
Okay, Brian, take us on out. Or Joe.
All right, so we'll do our closing song here. We're gonna mix it up for a little bit. I heard that people were getting burned out on Gone Wrong, so
What?
we're gonna mix it up for a little bit. But that's like our theme song. Like
Gone on Rockwell walks. It rocks.
Like Shaft never changed his theme song, but it's okay. There's lots of great songs out there. So we're gonna do, this is our version of Bill Miller's Praises song. Especially the studio version that he does, it's a little bit different, but ours is just, it's a little more straightforward to make it easy to sing along with. So please sing along.
Praise you for the rivers, mountains.
Thank you, Grovers. I just want to invite Umbedadaka to give us our send-off blessing. So, hand that over to you.
Thank you, Geronimo. You did great tonight, by the way. I just want to say thank you. And although our relative Chebon has already left our meeting tonight, I want to thank him for his great words and for just the affirmations that he gave us, the encouragement that he gave us tonight. So I thought that was very beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out with our send-off blessing. So if you guys will join me. Hey. Heavenly Father, I pray that you place a hand on each one of our relatives tonight. I want to thank you for allowing us to gather here together to be able to hear from our relative Chebon. I pray that you continue to guide him on his journey. And I just want to thank you for the words that he spoke from his heart tonight. I pray that you walk with us as we take our journeys along the pathways you designed for each of us. I pray that you help each of us to stand boldly within our identities and cling tightly to the ways of life that you have shown our people. I pray that you give us the strength to be able to stand alongside you. That you just help us to do as you want us to, Lord. You know what I'm trying to say. You know what's on my heart, and I just want to thank you for tonight. I pray that you just guide us through the rest of the week, Lord. Like I said, you know what's on my heart. You know what I want to say, and even if I can't say it, you understand. I ask all these things in your son Jesus' name. Amen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave. Bye.
All right. See you all next week. Who do we got next week?
I have one more thing, if it's not too late. And correct me if I'm wrong. I wanted to repeat something that was said tonight. You are the greatest of God's creation has to offer. Was that what he said?
Let's see. It was. I've got it right here because he posted the quote. So it's from the Gospel of Truth, which is in the New Testament. So that's where you can get it if you want a print version of it. But it said, "Speak of the day from above, which has no night, and of the perfect light that does not set. Say then from the heart that you are the perfect day, and within you dwells the light that never ends." Yeah. Cool. And who we got next?
It's either Zelma Wind or Damien Costello. So it'll be good.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you all. And I really like that we've got this kind of we kind of have this anti-establishment groove kind of going this month. You know, so I think we need to lean into that and put up the sails and like let's get it moving.
We're rebels in our own way. Hey, Creator is leading us on this new path. We're the rebels.
All right. See you all next week.